Good morning. With this video, I'd like to begin introducing CabWriter 3, and specifically CabWriter 3 Beta 1. I'm going to introduce the changes we've made to CabWriter 2, and with each beta release, I hope to produce a similar video showing you visually the changes. I suggest you continue to read the release notes, but this hopefully will give you a visual aid to help you understand them a little more clearly. All right, I'm going to start off with the CabWriter settings. And this is the Project tab. You might notice right off the bat that things are a little different here. We've got the usual user default files section here, and the walls section has been moved up, and two new sections have been added that I will get to later in this video. But one of the things missing from this project tab is the materials assignments. Those are in a brand new tab, a 13th tab, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yes. So a new 13th tab has been added right here called Materials. And you'll find the old assignment materials dialog right here. Although there are also some changes to that, which I'll also get to later. And then, if you remember, in the old CabWriter 2, when you used assign hatches, a dialog box would come up to assign hatches. Those are now on the Materials tab. And as you start off with the default cleared, brand new file, nothing in it. Right now I've got no model. Simply a CabWriter project. And when you do that, it will look like this, kind of blank. And you'll see 3 red bubbles here. I'll explain those in a moment. So that's the first major change, and now I'm going to get into the details of it. And to do that, I'm going to bring up a model you may recognize. Okay, this is one of the models I used for CabWriter Comprehensive. And I'm going to look at that same materials dialog box now. Now this one looks a little different. First you'll notice green dots over here. And over on this side you'll notice some JPEG images. So let's start with what's going on here. This is the material types that are in a project. Rough lumber, perhaps dimension lumber, sheet good, and wall. So for rough lumber, in this particular model, we only have maple. So if we choose maple, we can then choose from a drop-down list of hatch names that we want to use for that rough lumber maple. And in this case, I'm using brick common face. Now, just like the old dialog box, you have 2 little boxes for the rotation of the hatch and the scale of the hatch. But now you've also got a little picture of the hatch. So let me just change it. And notice now I'm using Adobe Rammed Earth. And now this is the picture of the Adobe Rammed Earth. So you get a little visual cue as to what these hatches are going to look like. We don't have any dimensioned lumber in the model. So we're going to have a hatch called None, which is actually a real hatch. It's just white. There's no lines or anything, just white. and 0 rotation and scaled by 1, but I'm not showing here a hatch right at the moment. Now in here are sheet goods. There are maple plywood pre-finished, and shop plywood. So for the maple plywood, I'm going to choose aluminum. And that's the aluminum picture. And I've got it rotated by 45 degrees and half scaled. Now, by the way, this scaling doesn't mean anything in SketchUp, only in layout. In SketchUp, it doesn't actually scale the hatches. Only in layout does it do that. And the same for rotation. It doesn't rotate them in SketchUp. Hopefully they'll change that in the future. Now, because there are 3 types of plywood here, when you first start assigning these will be red. They'll only go to green when you've got every type of material assigned a hatch. And in fact, the hatch can be none. But if you assign it none, as we did in the dimension lumber, it'll turn green. This is just an indication to tell you whether you've assigned a hatch material to all of the various materials. And so now for the maple plywood pre-finished, I'm going to make that basket weave. And for the maple plywood shop plywood, I'm going to make that rectangles 3 by 1. And for the walls, I'm going to leave that at terrazzo. And so now you can see what it is we're using here for hatches. This is the old dialog box. We've made a change to this that I'll get to in a moment. Let's go back and look at the project tab and compare it visually to the old project tab. I'll just move this over. See if I can get this one on. Notice this is the materials dialog box that we moved to this materials tab. This is the walls that's up here, and this is the user defaults here. So if I look at the materials tab now, there's not one over here, but notice that in the old one we had end panel and back panel. That wasn't terribly useful because in typical designs, end panels and back panels are the same. So what we did with the new one was we combined end panels and back panels into the same material. And we separated out end and back panel sheets, which is the sheet good for end and back panels. If you have a sheet end, this is where you would set that. So we actually created one more input here and combined the end and back panels and the end and back sheets. The frame and panel stuff is still here, and we moved the slab door stuff up. It used to be down here. We just physically moved it up. So you have a little more choice and a little more control here with this materials dialog box. Okay, so let me just review this one more time. When you first start a project, a blank project, these will be all red, indicating that you have not assigned anything to the material types and material name combinations. As you assign them, and as you completely assign them, these will turn green. The names of the hatches you assigned will show up here. The rotation and scale that will be affected in the layout drawings will be here. And you will have a sample of the hatch that you chose here. So now I want to move on to the next major changes that have been made. The next significant change has to do with the wall tool. So I'm going to go back to my fresh model. And I'll close this for the moment. This is just a brand new project. Nothing's been done to it yet. So I'm going to start with the wall tool. Now we made a number of changes to the wall tool. Most of the changes, or one of the major changes we made to the wall tool, is that the user now provides the wall name, whereas in CabWriter 2, CabWriter provided the wall name, and it was just wall 1, wall 2, wall 3, so on and so forth. Now the user must provide the wall name. And there's a good reason for this, and it'll be clear when I show you another change in CabWriter, which was the automatic generation of some scenes. But for now, let me just show you the new wall tool. As I click the Construct Walls tool, I get my usual icon, and I'll click anywhere where I want to start a wall. I'm going to start at the origin. And the moment I do, I get a dialog box. And it wants a wall name. Now, you can make the wall name anything you want. I suggest a strategy. One is keep it short, because it'll become part of a scene name. And you don't want scene names to be long, because scenes are in tabs along this top here. And if the scene names are long, you can't fit too many scenes in there without them running off the end. So keep it short. Keep it positional. I like to start my projects with walls that are named north, east, west, south, so on and so forth. Although you might name them refrigerator wall, sink wall, or what have you. But keep them short. I'm going to name this one the west. Whoops. Now, when I do this, two things are going to happen. Let me look at my layers over here. Keep an eye on that. And also my entity info. Notice I've just typed in west. But look what happened over here. I got a layer called wall, comma, west. The reason for that is if I create a bunch of walls, let's say I create a north, south, east, west wall, I'll get 4 layers. All layers will start with wall, and then it'll be wall east, wall north, wall west, wall south in alphabetical order. And they'll be on 4 different layers. But because it adds the prefix wall, comma, space, these will appear toward the end of the layer names if they're in alphabetical order. They'll be grouped together. So that's the first thing that happens. Next thing that's going to happen is when I place the wall. By the way, look now what's happening. I've got a dotted outline. That dotted outline is telling me something. There's a rule when using CabWriter, and that rule is that all of your walls, cabinets, or anything in the model should be in the positive red, blue, and green quadrant. In other words, the entire model ought to exist between this red axis and this green axis, and the blue, positive blue axis. Not down here, but in this space here. If it's not in this space, and if you're trying to place a wall someplace that's not in this space, you're going to get this dotted line outline. So I wanted to put this wall along this green axis. Well, to do that, what I'm going to have to do is hit the Control key. The Control key reverses the side of the line that I'm using to create the wall. So notice right now it's on the right side of the green axis. If I hit the Control key again, it'll be on the left side, But that's telling me that that's not in positive space. In fact, it's in space along the negative green axis. So I have to hit the Control key and make sure I get it on the positive side. And if I come down here, any place down here, it's going to give me that dotted. So now I'm going to make this 12 feet long. And I'll select it and look at the entity info. Notice I typed in west and it prefixed it with CW_wall space. That lets CabWriter know that that is indeed a CabWriter generated wall. If you create a wall on your own using native tools and give it a name West Wall, CabWriter is not going to recognize it as a wall. So be sure to let CabWriter add the prefixes. Use the tool to create walls, and the part that you add as a wall name, keep them short. Let me add another wall. I'm going to start up here. And this one I'm going to call the north wall. Oops. And I'll say OK. And notice it actually puts it on the floor, even though I started up here. It puts it on the floor. Now, the other change we made to the wall tool is if I hit the up arrow, nothing happens. If I hit the right arrow, it locks it to the red axis. If I hit the down arrow, nothing happens. If I hit the green arrow, it locks it to the green axis, although right now it's outside the positive red axis. So I'm getting a dotted line. And if I wanted to, I could hit Control and bring it on the inside. But the point is that the right arrow and left arrow will now lock the wall tool to an axis. So I'll just type 12 feet again. And now I got another wall. Now, because of the way I started this, I've got this overlapping. Let me undo that. And I'll start it again. And I'll call it the north wall. And I'm going to come out this way 12 feet. And notice that's correct this time. All right, so that's the changes to the wall tool. And you'll find out in a little while why this naming convention was important. To demonstrate the next change, I'm going to go back to this model. And notice, I'm going to go back to Project, the Project tab. Notice when I created the walls in this project, I did use the new tool. So it created 3 layers with wall, comma, space east, wall, comma, space north, wall, comma, space west, just as I previously described when describing the changes to the wall tool. Now back at the Project tab, I can now explain to you why we put these 2 sections into the Project tab. This is called the layer assignment. What I'm going to demonstrate to you now is that CabWriter now automatically generates the cut list, the DXF, the purchased parts, the base plan, the upper plan, and the ladder base seams. It generates them automatically. And when it does that, it will include the walls. You can take the walls out at a later date if you want them very easily, and I'll show you how to do that. But it will include the walls. And to do that, one of the things you want to do is determine where you want your door parts. Most professional cabinet makers order their doors and drawer fronts and drawer boxes from a third party. That's not always the case. Sometimes they make them in their shop. So you can assign the doors to any list that you want. The cut list, the DXF list, the purchase parts list. If, for instance, you're doing slab doors and you want to cut them on a CNC machine, you'd put your doors on the DXF scene. The drawer fronts, again, if you're doing slab drawer fronts, you might put them on the DXF scene. On the other hand, if you're going to buy them from a third party, you'd put them on the purchase part scene. If you're going to build them in your own shop, you'd put them on the cut list scene. Same thing with the drawer boxes, although those typically will go on the purchase part scene because you typically purchase those from a third party. And so that aids in the creation of the cut list, DXF, cut list scene, the DXF scene, and the purchase part scene. This box aids in the generation of the floor plan, the base plan, the upper plan, and the ladder base. In the base plan, it's going to choose a section that's 18 inches up from the floor. You may not like that. You can change it to something else. But typically, it will create a section plane. We'll just generate one real quick here. And I'll start here at 0. And I'll move it up some number of inches. Now, if I type in 24, for instance, it will slice the cabinets at 24 inches. If I say 18 inches, it'll do it at 18 inches. Well, that's what this is doing automatically. So let me just undo this. So this will give you a base plan at 18 inches up. This will give you an upper plan at 72 inches up, which is about midway through the cabinets up here. And this will give you a ladder plan that's 7/8 of an inch up. And the reason for that is if you look at just, let me bring this on. If you look at just the ladder base, you want to get, this is in my way. You want to get these in the section. They're 3/4 of an inch thick and they are sitting close to on the floor. And actually I think they're sitting off the floor by 1/4 of an inch. So at 7/8 of an inch, they're 1/4 of an inch off the floor, and then 3/8 of an inch more, it'll go right to the center, go right through the center of these parts here, as well as all of the rest of the parts in the ladder base. So that's why that's set at 7/8 of an inch. Let me go back to my scene here. Okay, that's why those things have been added to the project list. And now if I want to create my scenes, notice I've already created a northeast perspective, northwest perspective, southeast perspective, southwest perspective. But now to get those other 6 scenes, it's a simple matter of going to, I think it's File, CabWriter, Create Basic Scene Set. And again, I've got to tell it what to do with my doors. I'm going to start off by putting my doors on, I'll put it on the cut list scene and my drawer fronts as well, because in this case I'm going to build them in my own shop. But the drawer boxes I'm going to purchase from a third party, so I'll put them on the purchase part scene and I'll say okay. and give it a minute or so. And there you go. I'll move this off. Now, in addition to my perspective views, I've got a cut list view. Everything that I wanted on my cut list. Now, one of the things I've got here that I probably don't want on my cut list is the custom parts. So I can take those off, update that scene. But that's all the changes I have to make to that scene. My DXF scene will be just the upper boxes and the base boxes. And my purchase part scene, in this case, is just the draw boxes. Here's my base plan, and notice that it's hatched already because I, in fact, assigned all my hatch stuff here. So that's already taken care of. And my upper plan is here, also hatched. And my ladder base, also hatched. So we've just created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 scenes automatically. You can still use the old CabWriter create section from section plane to do your other scenes like elevation views and elevation sections. So that should help you a lot in creating the basic scenes you need. And by the way, that's all the scenes you need to create your production your production documentation. Those are all the scenes you need for that. Now, the sharp eye might have noticed and raised a question in their mind. Why do I have to assign these here? And also, when I say create basic scenes. Well, the reason is, and I'll demonstrate this, these are defaults. So every time this dialog box opens, it'll reflect what's here, but you can change it to anything you want. Notice this is the same as this, but if I want to change this, suppose I want this on cut list, this on DXF, and this on purchase parts, so all three of them are different, I can do that. And let's see what happens. Okay, so now we'll go back to our cut list. And we'll notice that our cut list has doors on it. It does not have draw fronts or draw boxes. Our DXF scene has the draw fronts on it, but no door fronts or boxes. And lastly, our purchase part has the boxes, but not the draw fronts or the doors. So this is like anything else, just defaults. And that's how that dialog box will open. And you can make it anything you want. All right. Let's move along here. Okay, to demonstrate the next change, I'm going to go back to my blank model. And I'm going to add a couple cabinets. I'll start off by bringing something out 24 inches. And 24 inches. And start here. I'll just make this a left, no. I'll make that a left blind. And I'll just make a 30-inch cabinet. And I'll make that an opening. And I'm going to make this a blind corner. And I'm going to have 2 doors. And here's the change. In the override default hinge side, we used to have the ability to make them on the left, the right, but now we have the ability to have no hinge holes. This is for people who don't use the standard types of hinge, but might use hinges that mount on the face frame or something. So that's all. This is just simply, you can override on a per box basis. If I were doing a 3-box cabinet here, and this were box number 1, I could specify no hinge holes in box number 1, but box 2 and 3 might have hinge holes. So that's all. That's what this change is all about. Well, that's interesting. What do you suppose that was all about? Well, I'll pretty quickly tell you. Let's edit the story stick. I called that a right blind. That should have been a left blind. Of course, I can't change it now. All right, but you get the idea. I can undo it. I should actually clear the story stick, and I have to make that story stick again. All right, so this is a left blind. Make that 30 inches. I'll make this a right opening. And I'll make that a blind corner base. 2 doors. No hinge. That's better. And now if I take the doors off and look over here, notice I've got no hinge holes. So that's just a way of specifying a door with no hinge holes on a per box basis. Okay, and now the next change is really exciting, and to do that, I'm going to show you the results first and then show you how I did it. So let me pause here a moment. All right, the last change in Beta 1 that I want to show you is this cabinet and this cabinet. Both are divided cabinets. This is a divided base. This is a divided upper. You've seen me use this one in CabWriter Comprehensive. It's a 3-door and wine cabinet box. This is kind of just a random set of things that I did. This is 2 doors, 4 drawers, 2 doors, 2 doors, nothing, a cubby hole if you will, 2 doors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shelves and 2 doors. And the neat thing about this is I did all of this without using the inserted door or inserted draw tool. It now is the case that you can do divided uppers and divided bases without using the inserted door, inserted draw tool. You just specify what you want at each position and CabWriter will automatically draw them. This really eliminates a lot of headaches. For instance, you no longer have to, or CabWriter doesn't protect the sides so that you can redraw this cabinet, which you couldn't do before, or not easily. You could do it, but not easily. You'd have to unprotect the sides, delete the doors and draws and the draw boxes, and then redraw the cabinet, and then using the add or inserted door and inserted draw tools, redraw them again. Now redrawing them is fairly simple. You just do it in the normal way. Redraw selected cabinet. Do you want to use the stored defaults? Yes. So now I'll just wait, and this takes a little while because it's drawing all the doors and draws and everything else. So there you go. This whole cabinet's been redrawn. I'll do it one more time. And what I'll do is, well, no, what I'll do is, yes, I'll redraw it once and introduce you to some things. Suppose I want to get rid of these 2 doors. So I'll just say Edit Cabinet. Use the stored defaults? Yes. Notice what comes up. You get this modify box selector like you used to, but if you remember in the old days, you used to have 6 positions here that you would have to specify. Well, now you get this other thing, this other dialog box called divided box. And instead of 6 positions, you now have 14 positions. This allows you to have 15 compartments that can be either a door, a draw, or nothing. So what this is telling me right now, for this box, this first box right here, box number 1, what I've got is I've got my first position is 25 inches from the bottom. And by the way, the bottom of the cabinet starts at the bottom of the stile here, or if there were a bottom rail drawn, it'd be the bottom of the rail. In other words, it's 4 inches up from the floor. And notice that my first partition starts at 25 inches. That's that number right there. My second partition starts at 31. That's that number right there. And 37, this number, so on and so forth. And this one starts at 69. That's this one right here. This one was 49. This one right here. Notice between 69 and 49, I've got none specified. And then above that, I have a door. So I'm going to take you through that in a little detail. All right, so 25 inches up from the base of the cabinet right here, I want my first partition. And between the base of the cabinet, that's what this horizontal line represents, the bottom of the box. So it says between this base of the cabinet and this position 1 is a door. Between position 1 and position 2 is a draw. Between 2 and 3 is a draw. Between 3 and 4 is a draw. Between 4 and 5 is a draw. between 5 and 6 is nothing. And then I don't specify anything after 6. But this is the top of the cabinet, and the last thing I specified was at 69. And above that I specified a door. So it'll take all of the remaining space, which is from here to here, and it'll put a door in there. If I go to the next cabinet, I'm sorry, not the next cabinet, but the next box, box 2, this one. Notice I've got, my first position is 25 inches. So this is 25 inches to this one right here. And then 50 inches from the floor to this one. And notice between the base and 25 I have a door. That's this set of doors here. And between my first position and second position, I've got nothing. And then between my second position and all the way to the top, I've got a door. Now, when I choose these doors and drawers, in the door case I can choose up to 2 doors, either 1 or 2 doors. In the draw case I can only have 1. If you select 2, nothing happens. If I were to make this a draw and select 2, I'd simply get 1 draw. So draws always are default to 1. So what I want to do in this one, I want to put none here. Actually, let me make this a door. 2 doors. And let me make this none. I can leave that 1 or 2, it doesn't matter. All right, let's see what happens with that. So I'll say OK. Now I've got to go to next. I'm not going to change anything in this third column, but you can see what's happened here. 13 inches is this one. 26 inches is this one. 52 inches is this. 65 is this. Or maybe I skipped one or something. But anyway, I got just these shelves, and then in the remainder, I've got a door. So I'll say OK. Now finally I can say OK over here. And I have to wait. This is fairly complex. And there you go. I've got 2 sets of doors and nothing here. By the way, I would usually make this a solid top. So that's how that divided base works. The divided upper is exactly the same. Let me edit the cabinet. Do I want to use the stored defaults? Yes. And again, what this is saying is my first partition is at 6 inches. That's this partition right there. And between the base and, in this case, the base is actually the bottom of the cabinet. There's no toe kick. But between the base and this 6-inch spot is a draw. And then above position 1 and all the way to the top is a door. 1. And I keep that for 3 boxes. So if I hit OK and next, my next box is the same thing. I'll hit OK and next. And this box is the same thing. I'll hit OK and next. And now this is different. And I figured this out ahead of time, but this is what it takes to create this wine cabinet. Notice there's nothing here. Just shelves. And when I draw it, by the way, because I'm drawing the mid rails, there would be mid rails here, and I've taken and just deleted them. Got rid of the mid rails here because they did nothing but cut down on the opening size here. So that's how I made that cabinet. And notice I was able to model that cabinet without using the inserted door or inserted draw tools. Those tools still exist in the beta release. They will be removed in a later beta release, but for now I wanted to leave them there so people could still use them if they found this tool creates a problem for you. But once we have enough use of this tool and we feel it's pretty safe, we're going to remove the inserted door and inserted draw tools. And now I want to show you a new tool, another new tool, and it's called Move Cabinet or Move Copy. And that tool is right here, Move Cabinet. So let me begin by pointing out some construction lines. This cabinet was built along this construction line. You can see its story stick here. This is an upper cabinet, and it was built along this story stick here. I created two new story sticks here and here. The angle of this story stick to the red axis is random. It's, believe me, it's, let's see if I can tell you what it is. Okay, it's 38.9 degrees. Nothing special about it. This stick up here, or this construction line up here, is the same angle, but it's 54 degrees in the air, so it's meant for upper cabinets, just like this one here is 54 degrees up into the air. So now I want to show you how this move tool works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this cabinet right here, and I'm actually going to turn it around and put it on this line right here. And I'm going to do it by moving it first, and then I'll do it by moving and copying it. Or maybe I'll do this one by moving and copying it. So all I need to do is select one component of the cabinet, choose the Move tool, and notice what happens here. I get two triangles. The green one tells me this is the starting point of this cabinet, and this is the ending point of the cabinet. This cabinet was drawn left to right. Had it been drawn right to left, the green triangle would be here, and the red one would be here. So now if you look at this cursor right now, notice it has a green triangle. So it wants to know, where do I want to put the starting point for this cabinet when I move it? Well, I'm going to put the starting point right here. Just randomly, I'm going to choose a point right here. And now all I have to do is go down this construction line to put a temporary finish point. Notice that the triangle now is red. I got to put a temporary ending point, and I'm going to make a short stick here, just to point out that it doesn't matter what the dimension is, because we already know the dimension of this cabinet. All it needs to know is the line in which we want to move the cabinet. So I'm going to click on this point right here, and when I do, it's going to move the cabinet such that its starting point is here and its ending point is the correct distance away, regardless of how far away I click this. Here we go. And I don't know what that flicker was about, but nonetheless, notice what happened. It moved the cabinet. It actually turned it around and moved it. So my starting point was here, my ending point was here. It was still drawn left to right, and now it's drawn in the same way, but just moved and turned to this new angle. Now, by the way, not only can I move this cabinet, but I can edit it at this point. If I wanted to change this so that the configuration was different, I can. I can do everything I used to do with this cabinet. So if I wanted to get rid of this top set of doors, I could just choose any part, right click, say edit cabinet. Do you want to use the stored defaults? I do. What I'm going to do is here on the first box, let me just notice I've got the first box here. On this first box, I'm going to take out this top set of doors. That's this door right here. I'm going to say none. And it doesn't matter if I change this back to 1 or not. I can leave it alone, but I'm going to change it back to 1. Say OK. And I'll say next. Now it wants to know what I want to do with this box. I'm going to leave it alone, so I'll say OK. And now next. And it wants to know what I want to do with this box. And nothing. I'm just going to say OK. Now notice, it's going to redraw this, and I shouldn't have 2 doors up top here. It takes a while to redraw. And there you go. It's been redrawn, and I got rid of my doors. Now let me go to the other one. This one here. I'm going to actually copy this one. I do it exactly the same way. Choose any part. Choose the Move Cabinet tool. The only difference this time is I press the Control key once. And when I do, notice my cursor has a plus sign. So now I'll just pick an upper line here. And any distance here. And there you go. Notice I still have my original cabinet. My new cabinet is over here. Now here's the interesting thing. If I look at any part of this cabinet, notice that's C4 upper. If I look at this cabinet, that's C6 upper. It's a totally different cabinet now. So I can change this cabinet and not change this cabinet. Here we go. Watch this. Yes, I'm going to use the same defaults. And I'm going to get rid of this first door on this one. That's this door right here. And on this one, I'm going to do nothing. And on this one, I'm going to do nothing. And on this one, I'm going to do nothing. There you go. I've redrawn that, gotten rid of that door. Notice this one remains the same. The door's not missing. This one is. It is. So there you go. Now you've got the copy tool, the Move and Copy tool and just the Move tool. The Move and Copy tool will add another cabinet just like the original, but it'll renumber it and it'll have its own parts, and you can do anything with that cabinet that you can do with any other cabinet. So I hope you enjoy that one. I think it's going to be a pretty powerful tool, especially for things like those of you who want to make libraries. I do not suggest it. I'm not a library person. I don't think libraries are helpful. But if you do want to create libraries, this is a good way to do it. And I may even do a little video on that at some point. So that's it. So until beta 2, have a good day.